Variable expansion is a next concept that can be very powerful within the command line. It's not an uncommon task to need to store some value within a variable and then recall that information whenever you execute commands or are doing configuration work throughout the system. We can see the example shown here of how to set a simple variable name and its value. Note that we're not using any spaces between the variable name, the equal sign, and the value we wish to store in the variable. Let's create a simple variable now, and then use the information shown in the second box to recall that variable. We'll use the echo command to recall the value of a variable. When we recall the variable by name, we use the $sign to denote that it is a variable. The echo command will then interpolate the variable name into its value. Let's create a variable named test_var and set it equal to the test info value. Now that that variable's set, we can use the echo command to echo out our test_var and see that its value is test info. This is the basics of variable creation and then substitution that you can use throughout all of your work as you grow as a system administrator. In case you're stringing together really long commands, you can also take advantage of the brace syntax to enclose your variables and ensure that they don't interact with other output. With a simple writing out of a variable as we just did, that's not necessary, but as you string together more elaborate bash command strings, this may become a more prudent approach. I'll show you simply here that we can do the same thing with the variable we just created. Using the other syntax would still include the $sign and then open up and close a set of braces that include our variable name. We do see that the same value is returned for the variable test_var, or namely, the output test info. It's super powerful to be able to input the output of a command into sentences or structures. You can continually do this as you write your first programs later on in your system administrator exploration or even further in the course. But the output of a command such as date can be interpreted in real time when we execute the commands. Let's take a look at some of that on the command line. We'll use the echo command so that we'll be able to interpret the date here. We can then say today is, and then now we want to actually have the system input the date itself. Here, you can see an example of that we can use within our terminal. This is using the date command to input the date on the command line, as well as some additional formatting options to that command so that we output exactly the aspect of the date output we wish to display. I'll start by just echoing the date, and we'll work from there. Here we'll use $, open a parentheses, say date, and close the parentheses. Today is, and we get the entire output of the date command. By running the command by itself, you can verify that's the case. As we see in this example, however, it may only be useful to have a single field. In this case, the field that shows the name of the day. If we wanted to do that, we can use our up arrow and go back and continue to add the additional options, namely the plus, parentheses sign, and then the capital letter A. So we'll say plus, the parentheses sign, and the capital letter A. Today is Thursday. Indeed it is. Now please be aware, if you're doing this work on a different day in your environment, then certainly you would get different output. And if you're seeing the wrong output for your actual day, then consider that the date and time may not be set correctly on your individual machine. You can verify the correct output by always reviewing the proper output of the date command itself. We can see an additional example of using this type of work included in the instructions here. Here they're using a much more elaborate version of the same type of approach. In this case, using the minutes value extracted out of the same date output, as well as the time in an hour format. I think something that's important to realize here is that in previous versions of this approach, a command substitution used the backtick character. This character is found on the same key as tilde in the top left of your QWERTY keyboard. If you see other people doing this type of approach or see it in use in scripts or tooling that you encounter, know that that's just a previous way of doing the same type of substitution. While modern Rail implementations take advantage of the annotation we showed here, it's still okay to use that. However, you may encounter that, and I did want to call out what it looks like and what it does, that it is something similar to what we're using in this more modern environment. Now, occasionally you're using work of this nature, but you actually need to output something with the meta characters themselves. We have a method for protecting arguments from expansion. We'll use the backslash character when we need to tell the terminal to not actually interpolate the variable, say $home, into its stored value, but instead actually print the literal string $home. Let's show an example of that. If we want to type a sentence that says something like, you are $home, we can do that, and it will tell us you are in the interpolated variable output for /home/student that is stored in the variable $home. But sometimes we may just want to literally print the phrase $home, at which point we would need to tell the terminal you are, and now use the backslash to tell it we don't want it to substitute $home to its value. Now we'll get the output of $home literally printed. This is also known as escaping the meta character, or in other words, just telling the command line interface to not perform the expansions we're used to seeing when we use these special meta characters. Additional ways to protect longer character strings are the usage of single or double quotes to enclose the arguments. We can see that called out here. Additionally, an example of using double quotes is shown here, allowing it to print out the specifically iterated values between those double quotes, as opposed to considering that an asterisk or these $braced annotations could be interpolated to variable substitutions or wildcard expansions if left unattended to. That concludes our section on command line expansions. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.